Well, Char Miller is an environmental analysis and history professor. He joins us now with more on this. Thanks for being with us. First, what do you make of this year's theme, Reimagine, Recreate, and Restore? Is it the right messaging?
Yeah, I do think it is the right messaging. Part of what we're trying to figure out is not just the messaging, but really how do we do the things that the messaging requires us to do? And I think the previous reports really touch on a number of the key issues, environmental issues that are hitting places like Miami, to be sure, but also Pakistan, the Pacific Islands, name a lot of vulnerable places. And all of these languages of restoration, regenerate, rewild, and restore, all of that really matters, and it also matters how you go about it.
Do you think some of these initiatives are too little, too late?
Yeah, Roee, I have a feeling that we're trying to sort of backdate much of our work. Surely 30 years ago was a better time to do it. On the other hand, what choice do we have? This is an existential crisis, and in an existential crisis, you've got to act. And I think if you start to think about sort of protecting the oceans as an example, the goal is 30%. I'd love more than that, but if we could get to 30%, that would be one really crucial way of thinking about it. As the story about Miami suggested, and what we also need to do is to rewild urban nature. China and the United States are heavily urbanized, but the entire planet is urbanized. And if we can make an impact there, we can make an impact across the globe that will have some kind of mitigating influence on climate change.
The UN is also getting involved, of course. What can we expect in terms of international cooperation and commitment?
Well, my expectation is that everybody will cooperate and do what is best for the natural world. One of the key phrases that the UN utilizes, it's time for us to make peace with nature. But that also means making peace with ourselves, trying to figure out our relationship to the natural systems that make it possible for us to live here. A watershed, say, a shoreline, mountains, habitats, and the like. If we can really get at that, I think we actually have a chance to make some change. The UN is really a place to sort of confer, pull people together. But in the end, it ultimately depends on the grassroots, on local communities, starting small and thinking big.
I saw an Australian commentator respond to Greta Thunberg quite aggressively and said, you know, this generation expects, younger generation expects leadership to change, yet this is the first generation that wants air conditioning in every room, digital tablets and gadgets in their hands at all times. Do you think that that's fair? Can you have a top-down approach, or does it have to be from the bottom up?
I think it actually has to be three levels: top down, middle out, and bottom up. If at the provincial or state level there's no action, then the grassroots sort of can do what it can do in, say, a city like Los Angeles, where I live, but not much beyond that. If you don't have federal support, government, nation-state support, all of these smaller initiatives can't flourish across whatever the jurisdictions might be. And then that's why the UN is trying to sort of drive this as a global initiative to really get us to think about the intersection of our actions at the smallest of levels all the way to the top. I would say to the Australian reporter, though, just as an opportunity to sort of dig back, the concerns that reporter has actually dates back to my generation of the late baby boom world of the 1950s and onward. That's when consumption became the driving engine. It isn't this generation that started that process, nor drove it. And since we're still alive and consuming, I don't blame Greta Thunberg at all for sort of calling out my generation.